The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft gold across the endless plains. Clara shivered as she wrapped her blanket tighter around her shoulders. Still damp from the creek where they had taken refuge the night before, her heart thumped unevenly, a mixture of relief and lingering fear. The pursuers were gone for now, but the memory of their painted faces, the gleam of weapons under the moonlight, haunted her. The warrior walked beside her, bare chest glistening faintly in the early light, muscles taut as ever, his long black hair catching the first sun rays like silk. He moved with the unshakable confidence of a man who belonged to this land, every step deliberate, silent but commanding. Clara couldn't help but notice how even his presence seemed to bend the air around him, protective and resolute. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice small against the whispering wind. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he paused on a rise, scanning the horizon. In the distance, a cluster of low lodges appeared, smoke curling lazily from their hearths. "There," he said finally, pointing. "My people. You will be safe there, at least for now." The journey toward the encampment was tense but silent. Clara felt her stomach tighten with each step, unsure whether to trust this sudden sanctuary. Memories of her uncle's betrayal, the trading of her life for mere horses, pressed against her mind. Yet beside her, the warrior remained steadfast, a constant shield she couldn't yet fully understand. When they arrived, the camp was awakening. Children laughed and ran between lodges, women tended fires and wove baskets, and warriors moved with a fluid, disciplined energy that spoke of countless generations of knowledge and survival. The air smelled of pine smoke, sun-baked earth, and the faint tang of horses. Clara inhaled shakily, a flicker of hope stirring within her. The warrior led her through the camp. Many of the people paused to watch, curious but respectful. Whispers followed them, the word "mark" passing silently from mouth to mouth. Clara felt her cheeks heat, suddenly aware of the small circle on her palm. Even here, in what was meant to be sanctuary, her identity carried weight, power, perhaps, or danger. An elder stepped forward, a woman with streaks of silver in her, braided hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. She looked at Clara's hand and then into her eyes. "The mark," she said softly. "It has returned?" "It is time to understand its meaning." Clara's pulse quickened. I don't understand." The warrior placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You will," he said. "But first, you must rest. The land has been harsh, and your body and mind are weary. Tomorrow, you will begin to learn." That night, Clara lay on a soft bed of animal hides in a small lodge near the fire. The warrior sat nearby, sharpening a knife, the rhythmic scrape echoing softly in the room. Occasionally, he glanced up, his dark eyes scanning her face as if he could sense every flicker of thought and emotion. Sleep did not come easily. Clara thought of her uncle, the cruel trade, and the life she had known. But alongside the fear was a strange stirring of something new, trust, perhaps, or even courage. For the first time, she realized she wasn't entirely alone, and that this warrior, this protector, might be more than just a savior. He might be her guide into a world she had never imagined, a world where her birthright and her strength could finally awaken. Outside, the wind swept across the plains, rustling the grass and carrying the distant cries of birds and horses. It was a sound both wild and freeing. And for the first time since her uncle's betrayal, Clara allowed herself a quiet thought. Maybe, just maybe, she could survive this. Not as a traded girl, but as someone worthy of protection, respect, and even power. The warrior's shadow fell across the firelight, tall and unyielding. And in that quiet glow, Clara understood that the journey was far from over. The plains were vast, the dangers many, and the secrets of her mark still hidden. But with him by her side, she felt the first flicker of hope, fierce, unyielding, and alive. Clara awoke to the faint smell of pine smoke and the quiet hum of life in the camp. The sun had risen higher, painting the lodges in soft gold. Children ran between them, laughing and chasing each other, while women stirred fires and wove baskets. The plains beyond shimmered in heat waves, endless and untamed. Yet Clara could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. Her hand lingered over the small circular mark, a constant reminder that she carried a secret older than herself. She glanced at the warrior, who was already awake, stretching his broad chest and rolling his shoulders with the fluid grace of a man completely attuned to his body. "Something's coming," he said, not as a warning but as a statement. His eyes scanned the horizon, dark and unreadable, every sense alert. Clara felt a chill despite the warm sun. They moved through the camp together, heading toward the edge of the plains where the land began to slope toward a narrow canyon. The elder woman who had first spoken to Clara about her mark followed them at a distance, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "You must understand," she said finally, her voice low. "The mark you carry is sought by many. Not all seek it for honor. Some seek its power." Clara's stomach tightened. "Power? What kind of power?" The warrior glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "It is a legacy older than any settlement in these lands, one that can bring protection or destruction. That is why others pursue you." A sudden rustle in the tall grass stopped them both. The warrior's body shifted, coiled like a spring, muscles tense under the sunlit skin. Clara felt her pulse. Spike. From the tall grasses emerged a single figure riding a dark horse, face hidden under a wide-brimmed hat. The rider stopped a few yards away. "We meet again," a voice called out, sharp and laced with menace. Clara's breath caught. The pursuers, the ones who had chased them before, had returned. But this time, only one. His presence felt calculated. Predatory. The warrior stepped in front of Clara, bare chest glinting in the sunlight, muscles taut, knife at his side, long black hair catching the wind. His stance was calm but radiated unshakable danger. "You will not touch her," he said. The rider laughed, a low, cold sound. "She has something I want. The mark belongs to my people. I won't leave without it." Clara's hand instinctively went to her palm. Her heart hammered. She could feel the history, the weight, and the threat of the mark in that moment. A sign of power. A signal that her life was more than she had ever imagined. The warrior moved forward, placing himself between her and the rider. His bare feet shifted in the dust, sand crunching softly, muscles flexing like coiled steel. Every movement was precise, controlled, and lethal. "Step back," he warned again. The rider smirked. "Or what? You?" Without hesitation, the warrior launched forward, closing the distance in a blur of motion. Clara gasped as the man's knife flashed in sunlight, a blur of silver against the rider's dark clothing. Dust kicked up around them, the wind carrying the sharp tang of sweat and adrenaline. The rider attempted a swing with a heavy club, but the warrior's bare arm deflected it effortlessly. With a swift, powerful motion, he knocked the rider's weapon aside and pinned him against the horse. The tension in his muscles was palpable, every line of his body alive with danger and precision. Clara watched, awestruck, the way he moved. Not just with strength, but with unerring control, a force of nature shaped by survival and honor. Her fear mingled with awe and a strange spark of trust. Finally, the warrior released the man, letting him stumble backward, wide-eyed and defeated. "Leave," he commanded. "Take your people and go. The mark will remain where it belongs." The rider hesitated, then slowly backed away, mounting his horse and disappearing over the horizon. The plains returned to quiet, the rustling of grass and distant bird calls filling the air. Clara's legs felt weak, her heart still pounding. The warrior approached her, bare chest heaving slightly, eyes still sharp but softer now as he looked at her. "You are safe." "For now," he said. She exhaled slowly, finally allowing herself a flicker of relief. "Why me?" she whispered, voice barely audible. "Because you carry a story older than any one of us," he replied. "And the world is not yet ready for its power, but you will learn, and you will survive." The wind swept across the plains, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Clara looked down at her palm, the mark seeming to pulse faintly in the sunlight. For the first time, she understood. Her life had changed forever. And the warrior who protected her was no longer just her savior. He was the guide through the shadow of a destiny she had yet to fully embrace. The plains were quiet after the encounter with the lone rider, but Clara knew the reprieve was temporary. Her muscles ached, her palms still tingled from the adrenaline of the confrontation, and her mind refused to rest. The warrior led her toward a low ridge overlooking the camp, where the wind swept through the grass with a constant whisper, as if carrying warnings from the land itself. "You must be ready," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "There will be more." "They will not." "Give up," Clara nodded, though a tremor of fear ran through her. She had seen the strength of her protector, had watched him move with lethal precision, but the knowledge that others sought her mark filled her with unease. Still, there was an unspoken promise in his presence. He would not let her face them. Alone, the elder woman approached, her eyes sharp and knowing. She held a small bundle of leather tied with sinew. "It is time," she said, handing it to Clara. Inside lay a set of small tools, symbols and strips of hide etched with markings. "These will help you understand the power you carry. The mark is not just a symbol, it is a key, and keys must be used wisely." Clara traced her fingers over the items, the strange weight of destiny pressing against her. She realized for the first time that she was not merely a girl caught in someone else's world. She had a role to play, one that required courage. She hadn't yet fully summoned. The warrior watched silently, his dark eyes reflecting the first streaks of dawn. His muscles flexed as he stretched, bare chest taut and glistening with dew and sweat. Long black hair fell over his shoulders, braided loosely in parts, adorned with beads that caught the early light. He looked at her not just as protector, but as a guide, preparing her for challenges that would test every ounce of her strength. Suddenly, a shadow moved along the edge of the ridge. Clara stiffened. The warrior's head snapped toward it, every muscle coiled like a spring. The figure stepped into the open, a young scout from the warrior's tribe, chest bare, adorned with feathers and beads, his eyes urgent. "They are coming," he said, voice sharp. "A larger group. More riders, they have learned your path." The warrior's jaw tightened. Without a word, he reached for his knife, sheathing it swiftly and checking the edge of his bow strapped across his back. Clara's heart pounded. She had never seen him prepare with such deliberate focus, his body a perfect combination of raw power and practiced skill. "They will not find us unready," he said, voice low but resolute. "You must stay close. Every step matters." Clara gripped the bundle of leather tools, her hands trembling. I want to help," she said, voice barely audible. The warrior's eyes softened slightly. "Then learn, watch, remember. The mark is your strength. You carry more than a symbol, you carry a legacy. And it will guide you when I cannot." As they moved down the ridge toward a narrow path between sandstone cliffs, Clara noticed the warrior's shadow stretching long across the rocks, a dark sentinel over the land. Every footfall seemed to echo with the unspoken promise of survival, of courage, of destiny. Hours passed as they navigated the rugged terrain, hiding among boulders, moving silently through shallow washes and scrub. Clara struggled to keep pace, her body aching, but she focused on the warrior's rhythm, the way he moved with the land. As though the plains themselves were part of him. By nightfall, they reached a hidden alcove at the edge of the cliffs, a small sheltered space barely visible from the open plains. Here, the wind was calmer, the moonlight spilling softly onto the sand and rocks. Clara unwrapped the leather bundle, setting out the tools and strips of hide. The warrior knelt beside her, muscles flexed as he leaned forward, eyes glinting in the moonlight. "Tonight you begin," he said. "Tonight you learn to use the mark, to understand its meaning and its power. Tomorrow you may need it to survive. And soon you will face them all, the ones who seek it for themselves." Clara's fingers trembled over the first strip of hide. The symbols seemed to pulse faintly in the moonlight. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of destiny in her chest. Beside her, the warrior rested one hand lightly on hers, a silent promise. She would not face this alone. Outside, the plain stretched endlessly, dark and quiet. The stars blinked coldly, indifferent to the coming storm. But Clara felt, for the first time, that she was not powerless. The mark was not just a target. It was her shield, her key, and perhaps her greatest weapon. And with the warrior by her side, she was ready to face whatever shadows the night would bring. The night was still, but Clara's mind raced as she studied the strips of hide and the etched symbols before her. The leather felt cool under her fingertips, worn but strong, each marking a language older than she could comprehend. Beside her, the warrior watched silently, muscles flexed even in stillness, his long black hair brushing his shoulders in the faint moonlight. Tribal beads glinted with every subtle movement, catching the light as he leaned closer. "You must focus," he said quietly. "The mark is more than a symbol. It is a key to something older than any town or settlement. Tonight you begin to awaken it." Clara's pulse quickened. "Awaken it? How? What if I fail?" The warrior's dark eyes softened slightly but remained unwavering. "Then you learn. You will not fail if you do not give up. The mark chooses, but you must respond. Breathe, trust yourself, and listen to the land." She nodded, taking a deep, steadying breath. The wind whispered through the cliffs, carrying scents of pine, dust, and distant sage. She pressed her palm against the first strip of leather, tracing the etched symbols. Almost immediately, a warmth spread from her mark up her arm, subtle at first, then growing in intensity. Her fingers tingled, and the symbols on the leather glowed faintly in response. Clara gasped, pulling back slightly. "It's reacting." The warrior's jaw tightened, his muscles rippling as he knelt beside her. "Good. Let it guide you. Control your fear. Your strength is not in your hand alone, it is in your mind, your spirit, and your courage." Hours passed as he guided her. She learned to follow the pulse of the symbols, to trace them with her fingers, to focus her mind on the patterns. Slowly, the glow of her mark strengthened. The energy felt alive, as if it was not just within her, but a part of the land itself. Outside the alcove, the plains were quiet, yet danger lingered. Clara sensed it, a tension in the air that the warrior had not spoken of. Her instincts whispered of approaching shadows. She looked up at him. "Are they coming?" He nodded, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the cliffs. "Soon. The ones who hunt the mark will come. You must be ready, not just to hide, but to fight if necessary." Fear surged, but alongside it came determination. Clara felt the strange warmth of the mark course through her arm again. It was as though it had chosen this moment, this night, to teach her its secret. She flexed her fingers, and the symbols on the leather glowed brighter, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The warrior rose, bare chest taut in the moonlight, muscles coiled like springs, knife in hand, and long black hair falling over his shoulders. His tribal jewelry clinked faintly as he moved. "Stand beside me," he said. "Tonight, you learn that the world does not give power without testing it. You will face them, and you will survive." Suddenly the sound came faint, at first, then growing. Hooves pounding in the distance, the metallic clatter of weapons, the whispers of riders moving stealthily across the plains. The warrior's eyes darkened, muscles flexing as he readied himself. Clara's breath came fast, but her palm tingled. With the energy of the mark steadying her nerves. "They will test you," the warrior said, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Do not fear. The mark is yours. Trust it. Trust yourself. And remember, I am with you." The shadows of approaching riders stretched across the plains. Clara felt her fear transform into focus, the glow of her mark pulsing like a living heartbeat. She knew, in that moment, that she was no longer just the girl traded for horses. She was a key, a force, and with the warrior at her side, she was ready to face the storm that had been following her all her life. The first rider appeared over the ridge, a dark silhouette against the moon. Clara tightened her grip on the leather strips, the symbols flaring with light as if answering her courage. The warrior stepped forward, bare chest gleaming, muscles coiled, knife in hand, a silent promise that they would not be broken. The battle for her destiny had begun. Clara's fingers tingled with the glow of the mark, her heart pounding as the first rider crested the ridge. Dust kicked up from the hooves, shadows stretching across the moonlit plains. Her breath caught in her throat, but the warrior's presence at her side steadied her. Bare-chested, muscles coiled like springs, knife in hand, long black hair brushing his shoulders, he exuded calm and lethal focus. Every movement was deliberate, protective, and powerful. "Clara," he said quietly, his voice firm yet reassuring, "remember what you've learned. Focus. The mark is not just a symbol, it is a weapon and a shield. Trust it." She nodded, though fear still clutched her chest. She pressed her palm against the strip of leather once more. The glow intensified, spreading like liquid fire up her arm, wrapping her in warmth and energy. The symbols pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. A hum filled the air, low and resonant, vibrating through her bones. The rider's horse reared suddenly, sensing the strange energy emanating from Clara. The man shouted in alarm, tightening his grip on the reins. Clara gasped as the wind seemed to swirl around her, lifting dust and sand into a spiraling vortex. The glow of her mark flared bright, illuminating her face and the surrounding cliffs. The warrior moved instinctively, stepping forward, muscles flexing under the moonlight, knife raised. "Now, Clara," he commanded, "use it." Clara took a deep breath and focused. She imagined the energy of the mark extending outward, a force born of her courage and her destiny. Instantly, the wind surged in a controlled blast, knocking the rider and his horse off balance. Sand and dust whipped across the plains, blinding the remaining figures, and the symbols on the leather strips glowed fiercely. The warrior advanced, his bare feet silent on the sand, muscles rippling as he closed the distance. With a swift, fluid motion, he intercepted the fallen rider, disarming him before he could recover. Clara's pulse raced, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She could feel the power of the mark responding to her will, growing stronger with each heartbeat. Another rider approached, shouting in surprise at the strange phenomenon. Clara's hand flared again, and the wind twisted like a living thing, forcing him to halt mid-charge. He struggled to maintain control of his horse, the energy from the mark creating a barrier he could not penetrate. The warrior moved with precision, knife flashing in the moonlight, striking with measured force, to subdue without unnecessary harm. His muscles flexed, skin glistening with sweat and moonlight, long black hair trailing like a dark banner behind him. He seemed both human and elemental, a force of nature incarnate, guiding Clara and protecting her at every moment. As the last rider faltered and finally fled, Clara sank to her knees, trembling from the effort and the thrill of realization. The mark glowed faintly on her palm, a soft reminder of the power she now held. The warrior knelt beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said. His voice was low, almost reverent. "You are learning." The mark responds, "To courage, to purpose. Tonight, you've taken your first step." Clara looked up at him, her chest heaving. I didn't know I could do that." He smiled faintly, bare chest heaving slightly, eyes fierce but proud. "Fear do it first. Fear is natural. Strength comes from facing it." They stood together, silhouetted against the moonlit plains, the wind carrying the scent of pine, dust, and distant sage. Clara's mind raced with questions, the limits of her power, the meaning of the mark, and the dangers still to come. But for the first time, she felt not only fear but confidence, a spark of control over the destiny that had seemed so terrifying. The warrior looked at her, his long hair catching the moonlight, tribal jewelry glinting softly, muscles tense and ready. "Rest now," he said. "The night is ours for a moment, but the storm is not over. You will need your strength for what comes next." Clara nodded, feeling the pulse of the mark in her palm. The plains were quiet again, yet the energy lingered, a living connection. To the land, to her destiny, and to the warrior who had become her guide, protector, and teacher. The first trial was over, but the journey had only begun. Dawn broke slowly over the endless plains, painting the horizon with streaks of crimson and gold. Clara's muscles ached from the previous night's exertion, but sleep had been impossible. Her palms still tingled with the lingering power of the mark, the symbols faintly glowing in the morning light. She wrapped herself in her crimson, gold, and blue blanket, glancing at the warrior who sat nearby, bare-chested and alert. His long black hair fell in dark waves across his shoulders, tribal jewelry clinking softly as he adjusted his stance. Muscles rippled under the rising sun, every inch of him radiating vigilance and strength. "They'll come," he said quietly, eyes scanning the horizon where the first rays of sunlight touched the plains. "Soon, and more than one rider. They have learned of the mark's awakening." Clara swallowed hard. Her first use of the mark had given her confidence, but also revealed her vulnerability. She clenched her fist, feeling the warmth pulse up. Her arm again. I think I can do it," she whispered. He nodded, a faint smile brushing his lips. "Then focus. You must be ready for anything. Today you learn control, not just reaction." Hours passed as they prepared. The warrior showed her how to harness the energy of the mark, how to extend its influence outward in precise ways, and how to remain grounded when the power surged. Sweat beaded on his bare chest as he demonstrated, muscles flexing fluidly with each movement, his long black hair glinting with sunlight, tribal beads catching the light with every subtle motion. Clara mirrored his actions, trembling with concentration, until the glow of her mark stabilized, radiating in a steady, controlled rhythm. A distant rumble shattered the morning calm. Dust clouds rose on the horizon, and the faint sound of hooves grew louder. Clara's heart raced. The riders were coming, not a single pursuer this time, but a group, armed and relentless. "Stay behind me," the warrior instructed, stepping in front of her. His bare chest gleamed with sweat and dawn light, muscles taut and ready, knife and bow at his side. "We fight as one. Trust the mark. Trust yourself. Trust me." The riders charged, dust swirling around them, their shouts echoing across the plains. Clara felt the energy of the mark respond, pulsing with her heartbeat, extending outward like a protective shield. The wind whipped around her, lifting the grass and sand, creating a barrier between them and the approaching danger. Warrior moved like a force of nature, bare feet silent on the ground, knife flashing as he intercepted the first rider. Muscles coiled with precision, every strike measured to disable without unnecessary harm. His long black hair streamed behind him, tribal jewelry catching the sunlight, eyes sharp and unwavering. Clara watched, awe mingling with fear and determination. As he protected her with effortless skill, Clara felt the mark surge again. She reached out, focusing on the symbols etched on the leather strips. A wave of energy extended forward, knocking several riders off their horses. Dust and sand twisted around them, forming a barrier that slowed their advance. She felt the pulse of the mark respond to her courage, her will, and her intention. One rider managed to break through the edge of the shield, but the warrior intercepted him, moving with fluid strength and deadly precision. The clash of steel and the sound of hooves filled the air. Clara's mark glowed brighter, responding to her emotions, stabilizing her fear, and giving her confidence she had never known. Finally, the last of the riders faltered and retreated, leaving the plain silent except for the whispering wind and the rustle of grass. Clara sank to her knees, exhausted but exhilarated, the mark dimming slightly as her energy ebbed. The warrior knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he said, muscles relaxing slightly under the soft sunlight, long black hair framing his intense yet proud expression. "You are learning control. You are ready for more." Clara looked at her palm, the faint glow of the mark still pulsing softly. The plains were quiet once more, but she understood that danger would continue to follow them. Yet for the first time, she felt capable, not just of surviving, but of facing whatever came next. The warrior rose, tall and formidable, bare chest, shining in the morning light, muscles coiled and knife in hand. "Rest for now," he said. "The storm is far from over. But you have taken the next step. You are no longer just a girl being chased, you are a force." Clara nodded, determination settling in her chest. The hunters had come and failed, and she had survived. The mark was hers, and with the warrior by her side, she would face whatever the plains, the riders, and destiny itself threw at her. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, Clara felt the thrill of power, control, and the promise of her own destiny. The calm after the dawn skirmish did little to soothe Clara's racing heart. She crouched beside the warrior, the crimson, gold, and blue blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her palm throbbed faintly, the glow of the mark dimming but still pulsing with a quiet, steady light. The plains stretched endlessly before them, golden under the rising sun, but Clara sensed unease in the air. "They will not stop," the warrior said, his deep voice cutting through the whisper of wind across the grass. His bare chest gleamed. In the morning light, muscles rippling as he moved, knife in hand, long black hair falling over his shoulders, tribal beads catching the sun. "The mark has drawn attention beyond what you know. They will come prepared next time." Clara's chest tightened. "Prepared? How? How can I stop them if they bring more?" The warrior's eyes darkened, but there was a hint of pride. "By learning what the mark truly is and what it can do. Come, we must go to the sacred place." They moved swiftly through the plains, Clara's steps careful but purposeful. The warrior led her to a hidden canyon, its walls towering and lined with ancient carvings. The air here was cooler, carrying the scent of pine and stone, a stark contrast to the sun-baked plains. At the center, a shallow pool reflected the sky, its water still and clear, surrounded by rock etched with symbols similar to those on her leather strips. "This place has been waiting for you," the warrior said. "The mark chooses its bearer, and you are ready to understand its true purpose." Clara knelt beside the pool, the leather strips laid out in front of her. She pressed her palm to one of them, and immediately, Warmth coursed through her arm. The symbols on the leather flared, mirrored in the carvings around the canyon. She felt a pulse, a rhythm that connected her to the land, the water, and the canyon itself. The warrior knelt beside her, muscles flexing in the morning light, long, black hair falling in front of his eyes. His presence was grounding, a steady force amidst the surge of energy. "Listen," he instructed. "The mark is a key to knowledge and power. Not just protection, not just strength, but vision. It will show you what is hidden, what must be revealed, and what is coming." Clara closed her eyes, focusing. The energy surged through her, spreading from her mark outward, illuminating the carvings. Scenes flickered in her mind, riders in pursuit, distant plains, hidden paths, and a shadowed figure whose face she could not see but whose intent radiated menace. Her heart pounded. "It's them," she whispered. "The ones hunting the mark." "Yes," the warrior confirmed, muscles tense, eyes scanning the canyon walls and beyond. "But now you see the truth. The mark is not just for defense, it is for guidance. It can reveal paths, dangers, and the secrets others wish to hide. With it, you will not only survive, you will know." Clara's hand glowed brightly now, the leather strips vibrating slightly under her touch. She felt a connection to the land, to the canyon, to the warrior beside her, and to something larger. A history and power older than the plains themselves. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying distant shouts. Clara opened her eyes to see a band of riders approaching the canyon entrance. This time, they were larger in number, heavily armed, their intent unmistakable. "Get ready," the warrior said, rising, muscles coiled, knife in hand, long black, hair flowing over his shoulders, tribal jewelry glinting in the sunlight. "You now have knowledge. You now have power. Use it wisely." Clara rose, trembling but resolute. The glow of her mark flared, connecting her to the symbols, the canyon, and the warrior. She felt strength flowing into her, courage surging where fear had lived. She would not run. She would not hide. The riders charged, the dust of their approach kicking up like a storm. Clara extended her palm, and a wave of energy surged outward, forming a protective barrier that pulsed with the rhythm of her heartbeat. The warrior moved with her, knife flashing, muscles flexing with precise, lethal grace, long hair whipping in the wind, eyes unyielding and focused. The battle for her destiny had escalated. The plains trembled beneath the charge of horses, the energy of the mark intertwining with the warrior's strength. Clara understood now she was not just surviving. She was awakening, and the storm of destiny had only just begun. The sun hung high over the plains, casting sharp shadows across the rocky cliffs. Clara stood at the edge of the canyon, the crimson, gold, and blue blanket draped over her shoulders, the glowing mark on her palm pulsing steadily. She had trained, fought, and awakened the full potential of the mark. Today would determine everything. Beside her, the warrior stood, bare-chested, muscles taut and gleaming under the harsh sunlight, long black hair falling over his shoulders, tribal bone and bead, jewelry glinting with each movement. Knife at his side, eyes dark and unwavering, he exuded an aura of calm power, ready to protect, ready to strike. The horizon darkened with the approaching riders. This was no ordinary raid. Dozens of men, heavily armed and determined, rode, with a single purpose, to claim the mark. Clara's heart pounded, but fear no longer dominated her. She felt the mark's energy coursing through her, connected to the earth, the cliffs, and the warrior beside her. "Clara," he said, placing a steady hand on her shoulder, "remember everything. The mark is not just power, it is your will, your courage, your choice. Today, you face them as who you are meant to be." Clara nodded, the warmth of the mark spreading up her arm, glowing brighter with each beat of her heart. She raised her palm, and the symbols etched on the leather. Strips pulsed in response. The wind shifted, swirling dust and sand, carrying the energy of her awakening across the plains. The riders charged, but Clara focused, extending the mark's energy outward. A wave of force surged, throwing several horses off balance, scattering. Their formation. The warrior moved like a living force of nature, bare feet silent on the ground, muscles flexing with precision, knife and bow flashing in deadly arcs. Every movement he made complemented the mark's energy, protecting Clara while striking fear into their enemies. Clara stepped forward, fully embracing the power. She traced the glowing symbols in the air with her palm, and the energy solidified into a shimmering barrier. Riders struck against it, halted by an invisible wall, their weapons clattering harmlessly. She could feel their intentions, their fear, their desperation, and she used it, pushing them back, guiding them away without unnecessary harm. Warrior intercepted a leader trying to break through, knife flashing, muscles rippling, his long black hair whipping behind him. The clash was precise, efficient, and swift. Together they were unstoppable, the mark and the warrior, a perfect union of power and skill. Finally, the last rider fell back, retreating in defeat. The plains were silent again, only the wind whispering across the grass. Clara sank to her, knees, exhaustion, and exhilaration flooding her. The mark dimmed slightly, but its warmth remained, a steady reminder of her strength and growth. The warrior knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder, muscles relaxing under the afternoon. "Son, you've done it," he said, voice deep and proud. "You've embraced the mark, faced your fears, and protected what matters. You are no longer hunted, you are free." Clara looked at him, gratitude and awe in her eyes. I couldn't have done it without you." He shook his head, a faint smile softening his rugged features. "No, you did it. I only guided you. This power was always yours." The wind swept across the plains, carrying away the remnants of dust and fear. Clara gazed at her palm, the faint glow of the mark a promise, a connection to her destiny, and a legacy she now fully understood. The plains stretched endlessly, but the shadow of danger had lifted. The warrior stood, bare chest glistening, muscles relaxed yet powerful, long black hair catching the sunlight, tribal jewelry shining. He offered his hand to Clara. She took it, feeling the strength in his grip, the silent promise of protection, companionship, and shared destiny. As they walked back toward the camp, the children playing in the distance, the elders watching with knowing eyes, Clara felt a profound sense of peace. She had survived the trials, mastered the mark, and reclaimed her life. The warrior beside her was no longer just a protector, he was a partner in her journey, a companion who understood the weight of her power and shared her courage. The plains lay before them, endless and golden, a world of possibilities, no longer a place of fear. Clara had embraced her mark, faced the hunters, and found her place in a world that had once sought to control her. She was no longer just a girl traded for horses. She was a force, a guardian of her destiny, and finally, she was free. The sun climbed higher, bathing the plains in light, and for the first time, Clara smiled with unshakable certainty. Her journey had been perilous, but it had led her here to freedom, mastery, and the promise of a life lived on her own terms, with the warrior at her side, ready for whatever lay ahead.